how we. Acha, I think there's a photo. Uh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So first of all, thanks for letting us speak here, right? And thanks for. I mean, I know it's a late session, so thanks for being here, right? And so what we wanted to discuss here today is basically give an insight into how we are thinking about leveraging this amazing technology that we are all interested in working with to bring in a new era of inclusion for a lot of people in the country, right? To financial products and financial independence, right? So before we get to that, let's see what we are dealing with right now. These numbers are a little bit old, but we have about 650 million registered users, a little more now, and 47 million merchants, right? And of those, we get almost 300 million users using the PhonePe app every month, right? And sending money to almost 11, 12 million merchants every month, right? And that amounts to almost 52, 53. Again, these are a little old numbers, but 52, 53 billion transactions in over 6 months by customers of a value of almost 870 billion dollars, right? So yeah, so that's a lot of the country, right? And everywhere in the country, right? And we have our data published. You can see on the site called pulse.phonepay. And you can basically see that it's used in every single corner of the country in every pin code, right? So when you have to build for something that affects everyone, everywhere, all the time, right? You use it in hospital, you use it in autos, you use it to order food, you use it for groceries, everywhere. So if you are having to build for stuff like that, how do you think about, how do you even think about the problem? Because what you launch is going to affect everyone, right? So the way we thought about it is basically we, before releasing something to everyone, we wanted to understand the system better ourselves, right? And how do we go about doing that? We wanted to deploy intelligent systems inside out, okay, which means that we use it, we build for it, we basically build for it and build tools and usage inside the company while we understand the technology better and how to leverage it. And then we basically go and start releasing products for our customers, right? So to do that, what we decided to do is we took a few of us basically decided okay, we are going to take the onus on ourselves and build out the infrastructure and the usage layer rather than setting goals for all of the company. Okay, you have to use this much AI, and you have to automate this much part of your this thing. And PhonePe is a very engineering org, okay? So anything that can be automated, people will anyways automate, right? So we did not want to set up goals right away before we ourselves understood okay, what is possible, right? And yeah, so the other thing is PhonePe uses a very homogeneous tech stack, okay? There are certain things we use because we have to operate at certain at this kind of scale. What we have to do is we have to make sure whatever we are using everywhere is super duper reliable, right? Everything must be really reliable and well tested and so on. So we have basically libraries and infrastructure for everything, okay? And it's a very homogeneous tech stack. The software might be doing different things, but what they use is basically very similar. So we kind of wanted to weave the models and basically LLMs and the new tech into the system rather than creating a completely disruptive thing where people's workflows and our SDSC, etc., everything needs to change, right? The other part is we handle a lot of sensitive data, and we ourselves also use PhonePe, right? As in, like, I work for PhonePe. I've been with PhonePe since the start, and we use PhonePe, right? Just like while there are compliance requirements and all that, we also basically want the data to be secure, like our data also to be secure. And Anuj is here. He heads our, he used to head our fraud detection. And our fraud engine basically is one of the first things that went live along with our transaction processing engine. Okay. So we are that serious. We've always been that serious about security, right? And we handle a lot of customers' data, right? And a lot of trust, right? And so security and compliance, right? How do we go about working with models and still be secure and compliant so that we don't get any data leakage or we don't send the data outside the boundaries of the country and so on and so forth, right? The other thing that we realized after initial experimentation was that we don't really, so we tried out some generic tools, right? And then we realized, okay, while it does about 70-75% of what we wanted to do, you actually need to spend some time. You know, you can't, for example, just take a piece of software, some agent and deploy it, and your work is not done. You have to keep working on it and, you know, tuning it, tuning the parameters, tuning the prompts, improving the tools, uh, improving observability, building better compaction, and so on and so forth to basically get it to work efficiently in your system, right? So we decided to actually invest in domain-specific software. Okay, like while we have some generic stuff which we'll show, but we try to build specific layers, like domain-specific layers, on top of that, which basically help the particular use case. Right, and obviously if we are PhonePe, we work at scale, so we'll obviously have something which will have a very large impact. Like whatever we launch tends to have good impact, good, we try to solve daily problems for everyone, right? So when we launch something, it has to be something which is not niche, and it basically can be used by everyone, and it should be able to help everyone, you know, like not a specific niche use case, right? So what that means is when we build, we have to be ready to be basically uh, handle a lot of scale, okay? So how did we grow about encoding this in our strategy, you know? So what we decided to do first was build the infrastructure layer, right? What infrastructure I'll get into. Then we come from left to right, where the engineers are obviously the first to adopt new tech, which also helped us understand the tech better. So one of the first things that we looked at was improving developer efficiency, right? And then improving organizational productivity as well as efficiency. Like say, for example, we have to do a lot of validation for merchant documents, right? So if we can deploy models to sort of expedite that process, or we have to do fraud investigations. If we can help out people by doing a set of preliminary investigations, our investigators, that will basically improve their efficiency. So this kind of internal use cases, right? Not exactly engineering driven, but to help our operations teams, right? And then finally the consumer product part of it, right? So for the infrastructure layer, we basically, this part is going to be a little bit a little bit technical. So the infrastructure part, the core of the system is basically our AI ML platform. So PhonePe has been using ML for a very, very long time. And we have the capability of deploying models which can compute at batch, which can basically compute real time. And also we have the capability to deploy and run models. You actually, everyone using PhonePe is running models on your phones already. Okay. So all of that is basically controlled by our AI/ML framework. And as I said, right, and people are used to working with this framework, right? We have tool chains for deployment, and this will handle auto scaling and so on and so forth. So people are used to using this. So we also wanted to bring the LLM systems into this, right? Like all the model deployment workflows, etc., into this. So that is one part which we built. Next is we basically needed some sort of a very robust agent framework. And we are a very Java shop, okay? Unapologetically Java shop, right? So we needed something which is like really robust, and it can work well with observability, is really fast, and where we can basically encode our learnings into a library form where we encode something and somebody upgrades the library, everybody gets the benefit out of that, right? So we basically wanted to have a framework of our own, right? And then there is Agent Hub. We'll come to that, right? Yeah, so the AI/ML platform. So there are three primary parts of it. The third part is basically the I'll come to them one by one, right? So the central part of this is the LLM gateway that we built. So we have models deployed everywhere. Okay, we have our own GPU servers where models are deployed in our data. So PhonePe doesn't run on the cloud. That's not exactly true. It mostly doesn't run off the cloud. We are primarily hosted on our own data centers. And so we have models running there. We have models running on Azure, on basically Azure's, we have GPUs running on Azure. So we have models running over there. We also have the PaaS Azure offerings, the Foundry models. We also use some of the Foundry models, local as well as global. And we also have some other providers. That part keeps changing depending on who wants to do a POC with us right now. Whoever we like, we might integrate with them, right? But yeah, so everyone will have its own auth. They'll have its own this thing. And again, if you remember compliance, I told you, right? Now, if you're using Azure PaaS models, you will know that not all models are available everywhere. Okay, some models are only available abroad, right? But we can't send that. We can't send customer data abroad, right? So on a use case basis, we can send like some internal HR document processing. We can send, right? For small agents, we can use global models. So we needed a layer, and we need the upper layer to be like speaking the whatever the chat completions API has become mostly the standard language for all systems. So yeah, so Godric provides that interface on top, right? And everything else that you see at the topmost layer, applications, Sentinel agents, and Python agents, other open source stuff, vendor software like SonarQube, etc., also does AI analysis. So everything is routed through Godric, right? So what does Godric do? It obviously provides the OpenAI interface, as I mentioned, but it also does a lot of other stuff. Okay. So for example, it will do. So we have our own internal OAuth authorization and authentication system. That itself will take an hour or a couple of hours to explain. But yeah, so we have our own auth system. Okay, and we have quota management, right? Why quota management is needed? Because some team gets really frivolous with catching up on their backlog for something, and it will basically end up all the capacity we have on GPU. So some quota management is needed. And again, we have obvious safeguards. We basically dog food the safeguard via Godric itself. We have models which do the safeguard checks, which are again running on Godric itself, right? And I spoke a little bit about the routing part. Okay, certain use cases we can route to say global model. Certain use cases we can route to our GPUs. Certain stuff we can run depending on what is needed. Mm, obviously experimentation. Some same use case. You send some part to GPT OSS, some part to Quen, and see which one is doing better. Right. So you need a framework for being able to route and measure and so on and so forth. So it will do that, and of course audits. Okay. Who is making what calls? So we are a heavily audited company. Okay. We sometimes I think we only get into regulated businesses. Okay, but whatever be it the case, we are heavily audited. It also keeps us very honest and our system super duper clean. So as the chief architect, I am not complaining, right? But yeah, we need audits everywhere. So basically, Godric also has audits built in. What are audits? Basically, which application is making which API call, which human operator is basically interacting with LLMs and so on and so forth. So all that is stored in our long-term safe storage for querying and lookup by auditors and compliance folks as needed, right? So this is basically what Godric does. So everything at PhonePe is and will continue to be based off Godric, right? And of course, then we have client systems are also sort of PhonePe systems only. And we have platforms. So one of the good parts of being in PhonePe is we have been building and we were pretty sure of how to build stuff because a lot of us, when we started PhonePe, we already had a bunch of experience to know most of what doesn't work. Okay, so mostly what we've built here has worked. So what that means is we have a lot of platforms which are fairly mature. Okay, and what we could do is use those platforms. We could leverage those platforms basically to build out Godric, right? We have platforms for auth, as I said. We have platforms for quota. We have platforms for experimentation. Routing is a relatively small part. We have platforms for audit, right? So this is all like bringing everything together, exposing the correct interfaces, handling the idiosyncrasies. So our models we basically run on VLLM or SGLang, and those who have basically used it would know okay, they have their own idiosyncrasies, and every model needs its own. It has its own special tuning parameters, etc., that you have to handle, thinking mode, and so on and so forth. So all that is configured in Godric at a model level. So with all that, basically how are models actually deployed in our data centers? So we actually don't use Kubernetes. Okay, we have our own container orchestrator. Okay, very simple. Two Debian packages, install one here, one on controller, you are done. Okay, one YAML file, you don't need. There's no. It's like a very simple system. We don't run any stateful containers. Okay, all of our state gets stored remotely on proper database servers. They may be VM or BM based, but we don't work in a domain where we can basically, where we have the luxury of having any kind of data loss anywhere. Okay, last thing we want are inconsistent wallet balances or whatever. So yeah, so we don't run any stateful containers. So we wrote a simple container orchestrator which basically works on well when deploying stateless containers really fast and scaling up and so on and so forth, right? So we again, as I said, we have been leveraging stuff. So we have been leveraging the container orchestrator as well. And on the container orchestrator, you can only deploy Docker. And we have to be able to measure uh, how many requests are going, how much CPU it's using, and so on and so forth. Obviously, Quen is not going to report it for us. So we have a sidecar built in. And this sidecar was not actually built for this project, okay? So all the online scoring or batch models we have, they are also deployed in the exact same way, okay? And they have this sidecar built in, and we don't use any load balancers anywhere. Okay, mostly it's all through service discovery. So all of this service discovery, and measurement, and audits for what is coming into this, and authorization at a container level. Okay, who is allowed to call? Is the person, is the service calling it? Is it calling, or so on and so forth? So all this is done through the sidecar, and VLLM is embedded into it. The core models are really big. We again have our S3 compliant storage. So PhonePe is a big contributor in the GlusterFS project. In fact, GlusterFS maintainers basically work for PhonePe. They have been for a while. So we've been sort of maintaining the GlusterFS project. So we have our own storage system built on top of that. So all the models go there. And yeah, so when the container comes up, it knows what needs to basically run. So it will pull the appropriate model, and if we have fine tune, so it will pull all the adapters, etc., and then spin up, right? And it will make itself available to Godric, all through service discovery. Okay, it's all automated, right? Yeah, so this is basically how all the models are running on our servers. Okay. Right, and so with now we had the capability to run models. So people, obviously the next step is to store information. So we wrote a small storage system with which basically encapsulates basic RAG and graph RAG and so on and so forth, and that is called as Severus, right? And it has embedding, etc., built in. So you can just give it a document and define the schema, and it is going to embed and store it, and it will become available to all of your agents, etc. And this is like a given out as a, again, as a common service. It's not very complex. It gets the work done. We try to keep our individual systems fairly simple. Okay, complex stuff doesn't scale anyway. So yeah. Right, so that's the role sort of the ML platform. It handles the onboarding of models, delivery, auto scaling. If requests increase, it is going to spin up new containers. At night when some online scoring model, people are running bad jobs, it is going to spin up more models, and so on and so forth. So it's all automated on top of Drove. And as I said, it can now handle, along with edge online and batch models, it can also now handle the language models, right? So yeah, so that's kind of the infrastructure we have built, right? And then we basically needed the AI agent framework. As I said, it's Java based, so we have so it's a relatively simpler system, and it's very extensible, and it has something called as toolboxes where you can integrate or compose multiple MCP servers. You can define specs and change. You don't have to take pictures. This is all open source. Okay, I'll give the QR code later on. Okay, so yeah, so basically, yeah, I wanted to keep that as a big reveal, but I wanted to also save them some work. So yeah, so basically you can define templates and make service calls, right? If you're, it also provides ways to shorten the service response, because you don't want to inject a bunch of junk into your context window, right? And it again has extensions where Severus obviously is not available, but there are some extensions available which helps you store agent memory. And we are just working on agent session and chat history with auto compaction. One is merged. We are yet to release that version there. And it also has support for something called as agent registry, which is kind of, I guess everyone here would be knowing about skills. So we built it a little bit before skills became popular, and it injects a bunch of agent metadata into your context, and it can pick up and run the whatever agent is required to get the work done, and it can also call multiple agents and so on and so forth. So all of this is basically open source. So I'll give the link to that later on, right? So that's Sentinel. And yeah, so we have a lot of use cases which are running. So all of our Java agents are basically written in Sentinel, right? So besides this, people wanted to have, when we started and we were building stuff out, people actually wanted to have a lot of access to all these models and be able to, create, do basic graph lookup and all that. So we actually took up an open source project. Okay, it is called docsgpt. Okay, it's still there on GitHub. And then, like the proverbial, ship of Theseus, it kept on changing and kept on changing, and now it has morphed into something which we called as Agent Hub, which is completely different from the original. And it basically lets you configure agents on the fly. And with you can bring in your data, you can bring in your MCP servers, you can bring in your services, and you can give your prompt and configure agents, and you can decide who to expose these agents to, and you can bring in your API integration, Slack, etc., etc. So yeah, so this has been like really helpful for us. So the architecture, it looks a little complex, but it's not. You basically have a whole bunch of data sources available here. It uses Severus as the knowledge store, right? And Godric for LLM calls. And there are agent configs, etc. And there are users who can configure and use agents. It's like a whole ecosystem now in our company. There are, I think, 200, 300 agents configured, which people use very, very like left, right, and center. Okay, for everything from understanding what new regulation was, say, for example, added by a new UPI guideline document. Okay, it's a lot of document, and we've been at it for a while, right? So 10 years worth of documents, what delta changed here and there. So that agent is like really popular. Then there is one called the learning agent and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, so this is something which we basically built as an initial offering, and now it has workflows. So we keep working on it. And this is one of the things which basically we did not really need to build, but building this has actually helped us learn a lot, okay, about what works, what doesn't work, how to manage your context window, and what kind of, say, for example, embedding models work for what kind of documents, right? For coding, what models do you use, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, so this is basically how we decided to go about building the infrastructure, right? So with that in place, I'll hand over to Pooja. I think I went by a little bit over, but yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shantanu. That was a good refresher and still sort of awestruck with all the things that we are building. What I'll be talking about is a little bit of how we are adopting AI in engineering and across the org and how we're using this. A little bit before that, I think everyone knows what is software engineering, but at PhonePe, as Shantanu explained, the massive scale that we are dealing with. Billions of transactions a month, millions of users. The responsibility and the privilege that we hold means we're working in an environment that the software engineers who work on this, who build this platform, have an immense responsibility. Software engineers at PhonePe are not just coding. I know the first thing that comes to our mind when we talk about software engineers is just coding, but engineering at PhonePe really is a lot more. Every feature that we build, whether it's UPI, payments, any product, it requires our engineers to go deep into the problem statement. They spend a lot of time on understanding the business cases. They spend time analyzing the data. They look through the decisions. They look at the current architecture, deeply discuss what is right for long term, take a lot of decisions, and only once the groundwork is done, they get to really coding it. And coding is not all. After we've sort of coded it, there's a lot of quality systems that we've built which ensures that whatever we put out in production is robust, it's performant, it scales. So quality is really at the center of it. It's not an option for us. When I talk about this whole SDLC and the journey that we, as engineering, do at PhonePe, I think there are two forces at play. One part is the creative problem solving, where the engineers sort of derive the value and the satisfaction about. And I would say the second force that plays is when we are building all this, there's obviously the operational toil that comes with it, right? For everything that we are putting out in the production, there are refactorings, there are upgrades of libraries, and a whole lot of other work that an engineer does, which does take up a lot of time. And our focus right now in adopting AI for software engineering and other org productivity is really reduce the toil so that as engineers, we can spend more time in creative problem solving, really putting the business feature out and working through that journey. I spoke about the journey here and how we sort of use that. Little bit before going towards it, I know while we are all still in early phases looking at AI, how it helps in software engineering, we have some core principles as we stand today. As we are clear that while we are experimenting and using AI to assist ourselves in coding, today everything that goes out in production is still human reviewed. Today, we are clear the decision making that we are doing, the architecture decisions that we are taking are still driven by engineers. So it is still playing a role where, as humans, as engineers, we are the center of it. We are taking the creative problem solving ourselves, but using AI to assist as we move forward. What I'm going to do next is quickly talk about some areas, some tools that we've built, which are helping us. Um, Agent Hub second there, Shantanu just spoke about the architecture. It has been brilliant. I spoke about engineers need to do deep research, they need to understand the problem statements, and having a tool like Agent Hub, which allows us to pull in information from various knowledge bases. We have Slack, we have Confluence, Shantanu spoke about compliance documents, circulars. For an engineer to build something and to assimilate all this information today is a humongous task. But I think what an agent hub allows us to, in a very simple query, ask about what are latest compliances, what are the previous technical decisions, and that massively reduces the time to onboard an engineer or help in decision making. Clio, again, engineers in the room, what we have done there is anyone as an engineer would know that when you are touching the code, there's a lot of history to it. There's a lot of code that you would have written. It's very difficult to go back and understand it. And getting engineers to write that document post the code has been done can become another investment in the hours that we are spending. We built a tool which can help reverse engineer, which can pull out create documentation out of the code. And that's again one area that we're able to sort of really take away the toil, take away the complexity for an engineer to sort of build products by giving such tools and accelerating their time. Clio is one. We spoke about Agent Hub, which is working fantastically for us. Other tools and accelerations that we're working on, obviously assisting in coding. Engineers have access to various ID, CLIs, and through UIs, they're able to access various models, latest models to assess them in coding. So that's where engineers are experimenting, using them to see how they can get faster. And it's not only about senior engineers. I think we are seeing how entry-level engineers and junior engineers can also sort of learn faster using AI. Another two interesting ones that I can speak about for our app engineers, if there's anyone in the room, there are generally three parts to what we build, right? So we have the design, which we need to convert into the UI, there's the business logic, and of course the validation. And this is where, again, we have built our AI workflows right now. It is in beta, where we're able to take a Figma design and actually convert it into UI code, reducing the amount of time that is required to actually build the app layer. So that's another one that we are looking at. I spoke about code software migrations, which is a huge part and a very essential part that we can't get away from an engineer. So we have another tool that we have built based on an open source project, Logan, that we spoke about, which helps build code migration recipes, which can sort of look at the code and sort of give you and suggest you code changes that you can sort of incorporate in your code base to actually upgrade. So some of these are initiatives that we're looking at and building. Again, going back to Shantanu spoke about the approach. Right now, we are less about seeking output goals. We are looking at what we can do at different stages of the SDLC. Validation and testing, again, almost in every step. Today, we're able to use LLM to suggest code reviews. Uh, there's obviously more improvements there, so we are looking at moving towards agentic code reviews, which will have more richer context about the code base and can take more inputs about, let's say, the PRD information and design to be able to suggest better code reviews and save time there. One last there I'll speak about. Again, as I said, quality is at the center of what we build. And for our QA teams, again, for UI, there is a tool that we're able to sort of build whereby just typing normal instructions, we're able to build test cases and generate test cases, saving us a lot of time. For example, there's a login screen at PhonePe. Our engineers can go and actually give very basic instructions of what a test case should be. They can just mention there that the first step is login, entering passwords and what they expect, and we're able to sort of generate UI test cases through that. So uh, as you're aware, I think these are all very sort of recurrent themes in every feature that we launch, and we're looking at improving our SDLC through all these initiatives. I'll spend a little more time giving some highlights while I spoke about SDLC. Of course, AI helps bring efficiencies across the board. And I think Shantanu mentioned already a few of them. He mentioned about the HR tools. Uh, Again, we have a lot of documentation. We all know that there are a lot of information that we need to interact with to get to anything done in our HR processes, things such as finding leave policies, applying for leaves, or reimbursements. These things to navigate can take a lot of time. We end up reaching HR folks. Again, that's something that we're able to sort of feed in, and we have something called an HR bot, which can sort of assimilate all this information, knowledge base, and help us move faster through these. Two others I'd like to highlight. Fraud investigation assistant, Shantanu spoke about. We're able to sort of automate a lot of work around investigation, whether it's external cases or internal cases. The agent is able to sort of assimilate the documentation, understand the red flags, and categorize for our agents to really only focus on the cases that really need a human intervention and sort of move that forward. Again, great efficiency that we are seeing there. Merchant KYC and classification, we onboard a lot of merchants. There has been a lot of manual work involved in classifying the merchants, understanding their businesses, really registering them on PhonePe. Again, AI is helping us there through KYC processes, just taking pictures from a merchant's ability to classify them sort of reduce a lot of effort. So those are a few examples on how we're using across the org. There are many more. I think we can always discuss offline. I'll hand over to Gautam to talk a little bit more on the consumer side.
Thank you, Pooja. Uh, I'll try to keep it within time. I see I have 10 minutes. But before I get started, and I love doing this everywhere I speak, a show of hands, how many of you use PhonePe? How many of you don't use PhonePe? Okay, all right. We got names, right, for the session? Okay, cool. Right, guys, I'll get started, right? I'm going to, talk about, or I'm really excited to talk about some experiences that we are building that we'll also be, really excited to put out for the country. But before that, I want to start with a story, right? And it's a story of ingredients, right? And this story is as unique to PhonePe as it is to India, right? So what are the ingredients? The first one is the digital economy, yeah? if you go back in time, uh, you would have seen a lot of developed economies transition into the digital economy. And that transition was gradual and slow, right? And it primarily anchored on broadband and desktop internet access. And then, mobile enabled a very different kind of environment for digital commerce. Uh, India's trajectory was very, very, very different, right? Uh, broadband helped India, but we leapfrogged to mobile, a mobile-first environment, and then that just blew up, right? So uh, we essentially compressed all the innovation that had happened everywhere else over decades into just a few years. Uh, what did that do to digital payments and financial services? It had profound impact, right? You all remember, I hope, there's a lot of young people in the room as well, that the most familiar interface for most of us, when we thought about financial services or banking was an ATM or a branch, right? And then somewhere in the middle, it was net banking. And today, I'll plug PhonePe, but yeah, it's all the payment apps that we have, right? So the very first ingredient was what we have today, which we take, like we don't think twice before, we make a payment on an app and so on. That's the digital economy. And the second one is really participation, right? Economic progress will stall if there is no participation. And that's where a lot of the levers from the government, from everywhere else, started pushing and enabling participation and inclusion at scale, right? So what happened? We had Aadhaar that gave a unique identity to every single Indian, right? And then we enabled access to banking by opening up, banking programs where you could use that identity and then use that to open up an account. And then eventually, right, we had UPI, which was a universal and a central access layer that gave you access to your money and your account without really having to, going to a bank or a branch or an ATM, right? So these two ingredients really, played key roles in getting us where we are today. Uh, so what are we doing at PhonePe, right? So as a country and in our industry, right, which is digital payments, we have moved from infrastructure and we are moving towards intelligence, and that's what AI is doing. It is a force multiplier in fintech. And at PhonePe, and you guys are seeing these screens. Most of you who use PhonePe, these are things that we are rolling out in bits and pieces, and we eventually will scale. For three of you, you won't see it because you don't use PhonePe, right? Uh, cool. So we've introduced a way for people to use the app, which I think is going to be unique in the industry, right? I'm assuming most of you use other apps for a lot of other things that you do day in and day out. We always want our users to learn the app. What we are saying now is that the app will learn the user, right? And that's what AI allows us to do, right? So we have search on PhonePe today. We are going to enhance that. And you can just search using natural language, voice or text, different languages, different combinations. Uh, we want to focus on action. So we don't want people just browsing through the app. We want to take them right to the action, no matter what that action is. It is going to work really well if it's very personal and contextualized to who you are or what you're trying to do. And the simplicity is going to ensure that anyone can use it no matter who they are, where they come from, right? Uh, this, uh, this again, is a continuation to what you saw earlier. Um, our app understands whether you're trying to make a payment, whether you're trying to look for something. If you need help, if you have a question, you want to get to customer support, or right, if you don't find what you're looking for, it tell you, where you can do that, right? Shantanu and Pooja touched upon this, but we use a hybrid implementation to do this. We operate in a space which is both highly regulated and trust drives everything, right? So we ensure that the processing is secure, no data leaves the PhonePe environment, no matter what. We use a combination of both server-side implementation as well as local inferencing for data that's already on your device that makes sure that it is secure and your data belongs to you. Uh, and there's a bunch of things that you can do, right? Like I figured out how much money I send my wife in the last 6 months once I used this, right? Like every single time it looks small, but then in aggregate, it's a lot. I need that. Yeah, cool. So you can look for very generic transaction insights. You can also look for things that are very specific. You want to know you missed a bill payment? We can tell you that. You want to know how much you paid on bills over the last 6 months, over the last year? We can tell you that, and a lot more. And when it comes out, you'll be able to try it. We would love to hear your feedback. Cool. Uh, so we talked about how we have moved from like just searching and navigating to unlocking intent and actions. From that, we're talking about how we can unlock more. Right. This is what does a lot more than what you can already do with payments and financial services. Uh, you can check your credit score, and we also have a video summary of your credit score that talks about what you can do differently, what you can do with the score you have, and an explanation, a very transparent explanation of your score and what it does, and why it is where it is. Right? Uh, Credit unlocks progress. Uh, there is a lot that you can derive from it. Even today, a lot of the country is not enabled for credit in the formal sector, right? And credit score as a data point, awareness is slow, right? Uh, it's available for people, and it can really do wonders for you, especially if you want to keep unlocking, growth either for yourself or for your business. So we have come up with videos using, models as well as, in some cases LLMs that talks about your credit score. It talks about the non-standard stuff, right? Every model or every system can tell you that you need to keep your credit utilization below 30%. You don't need AI for that. But this can talk about, which of your, credit accounts are good, bad, how the history has been, and give you exact insights based on your behavior as a user, right? We also have simulations that can tell you that, if you need to get a home loan 6 months out, right? It can talk about what you need to do to get like a really good deal on that, home loan. And then, while we do this in the app, in all of our other product offerings, uh, it all comes down to operations and how we are able to manage this for our users. What you're looking at here is our, support interface. When AI first came out, CX and customer support became the very obvious space for it to like do wonders, right? Imagine the ability to answer every single call every single day the minute it reaches our systems, right? You don't need to worry about scaling the people, but you can do more with the people that you have. We do a bunch of things here. We are able to intervene even before customers reach out to report issues. When they do, right, we have chatbots that are able to talk to the customer in their tone, in their language, and focus on resolving issues faster. Uh, uh, we also use this in order to you know, uh, walk our customers through newer products, newer features, educate them on how they can use something that's out there, and communicate the value proposition. Cool. So I'm on time. Uh, in conclusion, AI will accelerate financial inclusion. I talked about it being a force multiplier, right? Um, all the infrastructure that we built, the ingredients that we talked about, right, gave us the reach, right? AI is what will give us intelligence. Uh, Shantanu talked about this earlier, right? Our approach has always been that, hey, let's solve a problem that exists and not just, keep doing POCs. In the last couple of years, with the way technology has evolved, especially, on the hardware and the LLM side of things, I think the POCs will keep running, but we can now tightly talk about problems that we can actually resolve with clear success, right? Uh, One of the things that we did was, right, we kind of reused what we had, both on the hardware side, the infrastructure side, right? Shantanu did talk about this a little. And trust is, big for us, right? We operate on trust. That's the, most valuable currency for a company like PhonePe. So whenever we are building new features, whenever we are setting this up, right, we ensure that privacy and security is a part of it. It's embedded, and that's intentional and by design. We always talk about using AI responsibly, and we believe we can use it very, very thoughtfully without compromising on our fundamentals of data privacy, security, and reliability, right? And that's it. If you know, uh, Shantanu, you want to take this?
We basically have some stuff. Generally, we try to open source little bit infrastructure level stuff. So you can go to this site. You will find the container orchestrator we have, the AI agent framework we have, and a few interesting libraries. You should be and well-regarded security software called Mantis, which you can basically use to scan your domains, etc. Please visit the site, use the software, file issues, send PRs. We'll be more than happy to discuss and or add features or accept features, documentation and whatever whatnot, right? So yeah, I think thank you, and I guess we'll take questions. Yeah, yes, please go ahead.
How do PhonePe generate revenue?
So, yeah, I think uh, like payments does generate revenue. Let me put it that way. A lot of people think it does not. It does, and that's one of the ways that we generate revenue. You don't use PhonePe. I won't forget. Okay.
Okay, so there is
Uh,
a lot more you can do than basically just payment. And as I said, leaving the immediate revenue question aside, which I think we'll get to what we get to, numbers, etc. are public, our DRHP has been filed and so on and so forth. What we've always tried to do is basically try to solve problems for people and scale. Okay. Everything else, we genuinely believe everything else will fall in place. Okay. If you take a problem which exists for someone and you solve for it, it will work out for both the customers and the business. You just have to be a little honest about it, and you have to be a little safe about it, and not be too trigger happy about it. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be a little patient about it. Right? So, yeah, I guess that I hope answers a part of your question. Yes, right? Rest is more complicated, which you can get in the DRHP. Yes, please.
Hi, Ankur this side, right?
And one by one.
Uh,
He,
so,
yes.
what is the use of auditing API calls? Like, if your internal service is calling another service to make a payment, let's say.
Yeah.
So, what is the use case of auditing that API call?
It is not about internal. So, so typically system to system calls may or may not be audited, but human to system calls have to be audited, right? So some of the systems, say for example, there is a payment system which exposes some API which is used by some console, right? And if somebody from the AML team or FRA team needs to get some information, right? This is a person's information. That person, the investigator is allowed by law to access that information. But we still don't want anyone having just by having granted that power doesn't mean okay, he can use that API to say, for example, stalk his ex-girlfriend. You know what I mean? So that is why we are a little bit strong about uh, auditing. For system to system calls, we rely very heavily on our authentication and authorization system, which can handle insane scales. And frankly speaking, the number of API calls, etc., that we handle, it is not possible to audit everything, okay, without causing significant slowness or spending insane amounts of money. Okay, we do have very interesting systems. Again, it will take a time, which can trace. We don't use our scale is so big we can't really use distributed tracing as well. Okay, it gets really expensive. So we have built systems which can trace overall flow of calls, etc., across the graph and so on and so forth. Okay, maybe we'll talk about it some other day. Yes,
Hi, Ankur this side, right?
sorry. Yes.
Thank you for such a detailed presentation and obviously congratulations on filing for DRHP. And PhonePe DRHP reading is more like how India behaves, how is India's nervous system in a way when it comes to spending. A bunch of questions. Given you said you process close to $1 trillion of worth of transaction in 6 months period time,
Yeah.
right? Which is as large becoming like say Visa and Mastercard in terms of building the payment rail system, right? And India is obviously giant. Do we see the other form of payment innovation which is happening in the form of tokenization, in the form of agentic commerce, in the form of voice-to-voice payments? I mean, where India is like say voice-first country, India and the commerce is practically moving more to the LLM side. Does these kind of consumer front-facing, like so obviously there is so much work to do at the back side of yours, but I'm saying at the consumer front-facing, those kind of innovation would still come from the homegrown ventures like say
It
PhonePe or
has
with
to. It has to come. I genuinely believe it has to come, and I have always believed that. Okay, and we get like honestly, I'll give you a completely different example. Okay, a new engineer will come in and say, "Oh, you're not using Kubernetes. You're not using cloud. You are not using XYZ. Whatever is the hottest blog post that week." Okay, but the thing is, as I said, I think, tried to impress on that in the presentation as well. You have to build for yourself, which is true for PhonePe. It is also true for India. India needs to be able to solve its own problems with things that it is building for yourself,
an-
for ourselves,
any
basically,
timeline
right?
when we see the first glimpse
For
for
the
those payments? Like, you know, still we're experimenting with others, right, in terms of those
You
micro
will never
transaction.
know. The experimentations will suddenly get you there. There
Okay,
is one that moment. There might not be one eureka moment, like, and slowly it will pick up. Like suddenly one day nobody started using UPI.
but given the
You
behemoth
know.
share that you have in the market and especially the micro transactions are there and so many new
Sorry,
businesses
I
are.
am probably misunderstanding your question. Can you
I'm saying
rephrase
that
it?
no, those new payment structure, new payment avatar, like say, which are behaving, which are with the new sort of AI world,
Yeah.
would we would be fortunate enough to see from PhonePe coming a way early than any other players,
Yeah,
any other.
that's what Gautam showed. Na? Those are actually real screenshots. Yeah.
Can't give you exact or ballpark timelines right now. Like I said, we're looking at problems that we know we can solve, figuring out how we can solve it best and then going about it. To your question, yes, we are indeed looking at that spectrum of innovations or problems. Uh, Nobody knows today, right? Because of LLMs, everyone wants to chat with every app or every system. But is chat really the right interface or the right modality? We don't know. There might be a totally different modality that comes in. Voice could be one of them, but we still, don't know that, right? I would rather get the customer to use things the way they want to use, and then figure out how we can really refine it further, than just forcing something on them, right? But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure across the ecosystem, everyone's trying to innovate, and we'll start seeing, that over the next few quarters.
Thank. I think we
Okay,
have
we'll
run
do
out
this
of
one
time.
last question.
One last
Last,
question.
last,
Chalo.
last.
Sir, I have a question that recently Indian government started and taking initiatives into the cryptocurrency space. So how are you preparing yourselves around it? And secondly, that relates to this question, is that uh, I don't mean this personally, but uh, pretty much all the apps look the same, Google Pay, Paytm. So how do you compete? I mean, literally, there is no competitive advantage to the naked eye. Obviously, your developers must be knowing how they are good, but as a business, how do you compete? Uh, that's the question.
I'll take that, Shantanu. So, first one, crypto, easy. Not really, like very early right now. So nothing changes for us or anyone else. I'll just leave that there. In terms of competition, like, I mean, if all the apps looks the same, is that fantastic? Like you can use any app and you just, know what to do. But jokes aside, uh, he, really nailed it on its head, right? He said, we believe that if there is a problem uh, to solve, and we are solving it well with the user front and center, uh, and we are able to do it with a good deal of reliability, ensure that, your data is private, ensure that, we are able to, let's say, uh, uh, not, fail your transaction or take your money and not fulfill what you were trying to purchase. We believe that will create the differentiation in itself over a period of time, right? So I think these things don't just happen overnight. It takes some time. Uh, so yeah, that's what it is. Uh, our vision, right? Our company's vision also talks about this, right? Our vision statement, right, is to unlock access to money and financial services, right, which is critical to progress of every Indian. And once again, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, right? And I think as long as we stay true to, you know, that problem statement or in pursuit of that vision, will be there right at the top.
Okay, I think we've run out of
All right.
time
Yeah.
finally. So
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you,
thank you
guys.
everyone.